assumption that the state provides something additional to us, right? And you can see really what it does. And really, at the end of it, in 2021, we get to a general fund that resembles kind of like what we saw last year, or the year before, about $190 million. Simon?
Just a curveball question. Your budget scenarios show each year as if we have a drop down or an adjustment based on our assumptions. Does this take into account the pattern of funding of the hold harmless year to where your revenue is established by what year your census was done, and then you have that until you basically are assessed again?
I'm not sure.
Are you, in other words, is our funding when it comes off stability funding still going to be out of the cycle where you are assessed your student enrollment one year and then you're held harmless for the next year?
It is, but that's somewhat modified because of 860.
That's what I was, because
yes.
How is it modified because of 860?
Because under normal circumstances, under SB 361, the general is that districts have 1 year stability funding, right? And then you have a total of 3 years of restoration. So, for example, we encountered our major FTS drop really, again, in 13-14, because 12-13 was our base year. So in a normal environment, if we didn't receive the benefit of Senator Delano's bill, we'd have the stability funding for 13-14. We would have a drop in our cash, in the cash flow the following year in 14-15, but we'd still have 14-15 and 15-16 in terms of being able to restore that FTES. It's a difference, a slight nuance difference between stability and restoration. So because of 860, really, we received the 3 years of stability.
But when they go away,
we don't get the additional years.
Is that our next base year is the year we come off stability?
Correct. Correct. Yeah, great. Technical question, but great question.
Any other questions from the council before I go to the public? Okay. Ms. Karen?
This is actually back to making the budget assumptions for next year. It has frequently happened that the budget assumption for faculty salaries has been set higher than seemed to me to be likely. And then, of course, we end up with a lot of money left at the end of the year that gets rolled over to the next year and turns into one-time money. And in the budget assumptions for next year, I see a assumption of increasing expenditure for next year for faculty salaries or for salaries in general, but I don't know whether we're going to again be presenting a budget where you've allocated more for faculty even though we have fewer classes and fewer faculty to give it to. How will I not know the answer to that question until I see the numbers, or
well,
is that an assumption you can?
Referring to the expenditure line item in the assumptions is that number, that 2.2 million,
Mm-hmm.
that includes faculty, classified, it includes everybody. That reflects step and column increase of people who are here. So a more granular level is that all of our salary budgets, whether they be faculty, classified, administrative, are based upon position control. And so we have positions that are funded and vacant, and we have positions that are funded and that are occupied, right? So that 2.2 million reflects those folks, those positions that are funded and there's somebody in them and their eligibility for a step increase in the subsequent year.
Okay, now I understand better.
Okay.
And so yes, I see that, and I also see number 22, program review and so forth, will be used to prioritize staffing, right, as in adding staffing. But what I'm not seeing then is an assumption that a sizable number of people will retire and go away, or a sizable number of part-timers will not be given sections and will go away for that reason because they weren't being given jobs. So, for instance, in 1 year, now it's all a blur to me, I can't tell you which year it was, the budget was presented as if new faculty positions had been added, when in fact the number of faculty positions added was substantially less than the number of faculty positions who retired. So the budget reflected an addition of full-time faculty as if that was all that had happened, and didn't reflect that the net result was a loss in part-time faculty, not an addition of part-time faculty.
Hang on. Colleagues, we're now out of time. I did extend it 3 minutes for technical difficulties that we had there. Do we need to extend this again, the discussion again?
Yes.
5 minutes?
No.
Okay, 5 minutes. Vicky, you can't.
I'm not sure of the question in there,
So
but
are you going
I
to build you're building in an assumption that faculty will cost more and other people will cost more. You're building in an assumption that some new people will get added. Are you also going to build in an assumption that people will retire and go away?
certain attrition?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, I don't see an assumption built in here for attrition.
We can put that in. We'd have to go back and look at maybe the last 4 or 5 years in terms of what the attrition rates were by
That's a great idea.
classification.
I'd love for you to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great.
Okay, Lillian. No, Lillian. And then Lillian.
All right, so this is kind of following along with the previous question. Both Karen Severn's question, but also one of the original questions that when I was looking for these forecasts. And when I look across all of these scenarios, the part-time faculty allotment remains the same to the dollar. And to me, in order for this to be like a realistic consideration of the college, I would need to see those numbers reflect the changes that would be required by this. And one of my questions earlier was going to be, you know, next year we're going to be sitting here, and is this all being connected up with enrollment management and the necessary shifts in personnel? Because when these numbers stay flat, those shifts in personnel are not revealed, and we're not having a conversation about that.
You're talking about this line item right here, right?
I am.
Okay, just for clarity, that does not reflect expenditures or part-time budgets for expenditures of faculty. That's really a grant or an allocation from the state for part-time, and it's been that, as you can see, it's been that amount for quite some time in terms of the yellows, again, the yellows actuals. So that's the revenue stream.
So can we let go of my technical ignorance
No.
and maybe go to kind of the point of, if we're building out different scenarios, that there's more that we would like,
Right.
I personally would need to be able to see and understand in this.
That's a great question, and if I can use that as a lead off, is that, again, as I said at the beginning, these are only revenues. Each scenario, we're currently building out the expenditure piece is really where you're going with it, in terms of what does that look like for full-time and part-time faculty, right, if I understand you correctly. And we're building that out right now, but the expenditures are based upon each scenario and really enrollment, right? The 2,500, a flat enrollment, 2,500 restoration, 4,500 restoration. So we're currently building these out. And as you may recall, in the last iterations or lives of the 6 multi-year plans, is that we had that. We tried to take a step back because what the feedback that I received was that, wait, that is just too much at once. And so what we're doing right now is showing revenues for the 6 assumptions. The next iteration of this, the next conversation will be looking at the expenditures associated with the enrollment assumptions, really, is what we're talking about, and really getting to your question, and I think what you'd like to see sooner rather than later.
Yes.
Simon, did you have something?
That was the technical issue that I was going to try to clarify. And the only issue is that in the past, when you've done an expenditure budget, it's usually looking at the year's expenditures because we're putting together a budget. I'm hoping that as we develop this, we may get something either in the gray zone of a projected forward expenditure budget that will allow us to look at where we think the college is going as far as staffing, as far as programs we're targeting, as far as long-term facilities.
Okay.
It's a big thing, but you get the right.
Well, right, yeah, I mean,
Glad
that's
you're back.
We're glad you're here.
that's a meaty subject. Anyways, with that, again, these are the 6 scenarios. If, again, something comes to you at midnight while you're brushing your teeth or whenever you do your best thinking, please write it down or reach out to me, and appreciate the feedback. Thank you.
Thank Thank you. All right. Okay. We're going to go back. Our Chancellor is here, and we'd like to invite Chancellor Susan Lamb up to give us a few words.
One of them up for you.
What?
One of them up.
Oh, yeah.
Nowhere to go but up.
Actually, I usually call Ron after the shower and say, oh, I was just thinking in the shower. So, yeah, that teeth brushing was probably actually true. No, no trouble, I'm here. So, a couple of things. I think Ron already covered the FIGMAT team was here, so I'm not going to waste any more time on that. I came in on the back end of yours, but I'm assuming that you covered that. One of the pieces of that ties in that he was already talking about budget is what we do in the coming years. As everybody knows, we've got a couple of step downs that are coming. We're on stability funding right now as we're trying to grow the college back. We also are on stability funding for 17-18, but it ends in 17-18. That's assuming that the legislature will approve that for this next year. So we're struggling a little bit with trying to figure out what we want to approach the legislature with and what we think can pass through the legislature. We are trying to we have been talking with Senator Leno, who led the Leno bill last time. We also had Chu and Ting that helped push that through the state legislature. So part of the decision this time is how much support do we have to get maybe a stability bill through, and the possibility of whether we also go for some type of restorative growth or what we do in that regard. So we will be meeting with AFT, maybe CFT also. We're trying to get them in on the call, and then SEIU and ourselves to figure out a strategy going forward with the legislature. Part of the issue, I think, is different groups have been going with different asks, and I think we all kind of need to get on the same page of what we're going to go for, and maybe a little bit strategy of taking that forward. The other piece of another step down that we have actually in 2020, I keep saying 2019, 2020, okay, is also the parcel tax. You probably saw on the last board. We're investigating the possibility of where the city is in regards of supporting the college for extension of that parcel tax. Some people may think that that we're doing that rather early. The reality is you want to go for a parcel tax in an election year. And considering that we may have a very, depending on who gets the Republican nomination, it could bring out a very liberal voting group to counteract that Republican nomination. And so this could possibly be a really good year based on voters to get an extension of our parcel tax. If we didn't go this year, we would tend to go in 2018, but it's a non-presidential nomination year, so usually you do not do as well, or we'd have to wait till 2020. And the problem of waiting till 2020 is we're right there on the edge of losing that $15 million. So we are going to be doing a poll of the city of San Francisco to see what their opinions are in regards to that issue. One other thing that you'll see on the board meeting for this coming board meeting is the Civic Center. Right now, the Civic Center is in a temporary relocation on Market location, but we still have the original Eddy Street location that we have to move forward with. We have a couple options there that we'll be talking about just as far as timelines, initial directions from the board. We can go in probably one of two directions, and we'll be talking about these, is the possibility of getting on the state bond. We hope that the state bond would be passed, but getting to a high level on that, since it is a seismic retrofit, we would try to get on a state bond and then basically have to wait for that to be funded. At the earliest it would probably be funded as what, 1920 or so. The other option would be doing something similar to what we're looking at Gulf Street, where we could basically work with a real estate company to develop that location, they would pay for the building, for our building to be integrated within it, so we would still get our building within that, and maybe some parking with that, but it would be on their back more so, and we would be integrated into their structure. Regardless of which way the board decides to go, or how we decide to go, we need to start those discussions and start the ball moving, because we have a 5-year lease at our current location, and we need to start having those conversations. So those are some of the pieces coming up. There's some of the bigger pieces as far as, I guess, the larger impacts on the college when we start looking at money streams, and then also facilities. And I know, especially on Civic Center, it's a huge impact of, we've got a decent temporary location, but really going for long term. Whoops, I think I ran out of time. 10 seconds. Yes.
I'm sorry, did you say that you, that we're asking to see Civic Center would be on the state bond? I thought previously in a presentation, it seemed like there were 3 projects that we had managed to get on.
It was originally on the state bond. The previous chancellor had pulled it off of there because he was looking at the option of leveraging the real estate, doing the second option. Now, as we go forward, we need to make a decision of which way we actually want to go.
So we still have some other projects on the state bond that
Yeah, we
bond?
still have all the other projects on the state bond. We have three projects on the state bond.
But Civic Center is not one of them?
It's not one of them.
Okay, we had been informed that that was our top priority before.
It was originally on there, and then the previous chancellor had pulled it out.
So can you tell us what the 3 projects are that are on there now? I know it's the ocean.
Let's see, the one is ocean infrastructure, the,
Cloud Hall seismic renovation, and I think it's, mission.
and Mission.
Something mission. I have to pull it up, but I believe that's all right.
Is it
Those are
Mission?
the 3.
Okay.
I can bring back next week.
There was another question right next to it.
Thank you, Chancellor. All right, moving on to unfinished business, we are going to get to AP and BP 2.07. Council members, I'd like to note that there are copies of both AP, BP and AP 2.07 in your packets. I would also like to note that Lillian Marambo-Duck did hand out a version of AP 2.07 with some comments from the Academic Senate. Quite a few comments, but we'll let Steve start the discussion.
Thank you. For those of you who weren't here last time when we began discussion of this, BP 2.07 and AP 2.07 is our policy and administrative procedure on participatory governance. At this point, we have a BP 2.07 in place that is we do not have an AP 2.07, and we have operational guidelines. And yes. This is BP 2.07. We're going to talk about that one first. But so we currently have BP 2.07 as a board policy and operational guidelines that were adopted by the PGC a few years ago. What we want to do now is bring those operational guidelines into our procedures. So all of our policies and procedures are in one place and they're more easily found and worked with. So we're now, last year, a group of PGC members got together, a work group, and developed the revisions to BP 2.07 and the new AP 2.07. So we're now going to begin discussing BP 2.07. This is the first reading on both of these. There's going to be a lot of discussion. It's obvious this is a very important policy and procedure for the PGC. It really establishes how we do our work. So beginning with BP 2.07, BP 2.07 mostly remains the same as it was, with some significant pieces deleted and then restated in the administrative procedure section. The first change in the procedure was really just a language change. The work group felt that this language better states the principles of the PGC. So I'll continue on unless someone has a comment. Now we have a deletion because this is procedure that will go in the other document. Again,
Look, handle.
Oh,
I
handle.
know. Yes, tell him.
Yeah, so I understand that it's going to be in the AP and that's why it was pulled, but we were not able to discuss it at Senate yesterday, so that's more just my opinion at this point. I just wonder if maybe one part of it should remain in the board policy, and that's under 3A, that the members of the Participatory Governance Council will be appointed by the respective constituent organizations. So that's one point, maybe should remain there. I'm maybe overly cautious, and I'm not married to the idea to keep it in there, but maybe it would be a good idea to keep it. Just throwing it out.
Yes,
Yeah,
Brennan.
as well, her question is why that was taken out.
it's not being taken out, it's being moved. It's being moved to the procedure. So it's not, we're not losing the language, it's being moved to a different place. But the concept is, for the students who haven't been involved with this, it may be confusing, that there are policies and procedures. And the board adopts the policies, and the more detailed administrative procedures are adopted by the chancellor. And that the structure is that the policies are general and broad in nature, and the details go in the procedures. That's generally how community college districts do it. This district has been basically different from all the rest in that it's had only board policies that were much more detailed than board policies usually are. And if you look at our policies, you'll see that we have many policies and very few procedures. So we're trying to adjust and have more broad policies and more detailed procedures. So the language is not going away in most cases, it's just being shifted to a different document. But as to Attila's point, we're open, this is open for discussion.
And that's why I just threw it out and find it okay.
Yes, Lillian.
Can I get a reminder of how the AP, the authority to change the AP, because that's a key principle that is being brought up that we might want to make more difficult to change.
Right, and that was something that was brought up last time in terms of the idea that if it's in a board policy, it's more set in stone. And that's the intent, that the policies are more set in stone, the procedures are more flexible, they're easier to change, and that's really how it's supposed to be. Now, if you take something from a policy and shift it to a procedure, yes, it is more subject to change, and if there is great nervousness about the potential for change, then there would be an argument for putting more in policy. But the general concept is to have the broad statements in policy and the more detail in procedure. But there's gray area in terms of how, and it's up to each district to decide how it wants to structure its policies and procedures. So when there's a comment and there isn't really much follow-up, I'll just proceed.
Oh, Brennan, sorry.
Yeah, I do have a comment on that. I would just like to, for consideration, kind of raise that flag that I see where you're going, keeping the generalities in one and not in the other. But just for a reason of checks and balances, I would like to consider why we would be taking certain things out. Because to me, that just seems like it would be aligning too much power with one small aspect of the college, kind of bottlenecking everything into one person's decision-making versus keeping that check and balance in place by also having some additional language in the board policy.
Yeah, and as I said, that's a legitimate point. But just to clarify, administrative procedures are changed by coming through the PGC and the recommendation up to the chancellor. So it's not as if the procedures don't have a process for review.
Bushra, and then Simon.
I mean, to that, how it's come to, I mean, the changes usually come to PGC, and as you all know, it has been a big problem about student participation in PGC, and one of them is 5D. Chair are directly responsible to the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, and that was change. And usually the chairs have to be in higher rank, where the chair is neutral, and the chair has different view on top of everything, not some, there is very close relationship where a chair is a dean, where it is too close of relationship and it can happen many conflicts as now what is happening with our students. So, and students are very much opposed to that, to the change of the chair. The chairs have been changed from Vice Chancellor, or at least Associate Vice Chancellor, to a dean that will be chairing a council like this, as Participatory Governance Council. So that is one of the points I would like to make.
Simon and then Brenna.
Speak to your organizational principle. A policy is something that we agree upon. It's something that the board is affirming as well. What you're hearing from this reading, I believe, is that the constituency of the Participatory Governance Council, where they come from and who chairs them, is something worthy of a policy, not a procedure. It means that it's agreed upon by both the governing board and then how we do it. But if we move into a procedure, we're not getting a board that is reinforcing us for our beliefs in democracy and republic.
Yeah, I'm getting a little bit confused because by the way the comments are coming. Are you speaking to Attila's comment? Okay, just wanted to be clear. So maybe
it has overlap with what.
Yeah, so maybe perhaps we could sort of complete the discussion of what Attila was raising and then move on to the next topic. So we try to proceed as quickly as we can because there's a lot to talk about.
Brenna, did you have a question?
It was more of a comment also on D as well, but yes, that's why I brought the word bringing is at that. But yes, also just to comment, what you were saying, yeah, by the change of having a chair and no longer an administrator, I think that it does create too much of an area for lack of a better description, maybe favoritism. I mean, Dean is so close to other constituent groups, like students and like faculty, that to have somebody that has that much influence over one of the constituent groups and not be as far removed, further removed as an administrator, I think creates a possible liability.
So, but if we, Attila, which section were you on? I lost my spot.
I think we should first, we need to address that, but let's finish because I don't think we finished that first part yet. So we were at 3 process guidelines, and I think the student just was expressing their support to that other point.
So was there a motion perhaps to have 3A remain in the board policy?
Hold on just a second, Jeff.
So potentially, what could be done to address Phil's concern, if we look at Article 0.2 principles under B, that delineates that the members of the Participatory Governance Council are the participants of all constituent groups. It might be possible to say, comma, appointed by their representative constituent organizations, end of comma, and continue on. So then we're saying, we're all here from our constituent groups and appointed by those groups. And then we can kind of cover both points without having a lot of additional language within that. And then, since I've got the floor for just a half second, the comment about the chair, I think would best be dealt with during the APs,
Right.
Because that's where we're kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of how the committee is run. And so I would like to hold that conversation, so that's why I would recommend that we hold it until we get to the AP, rather than having it here at the BP.
Just to clarify, this section, the sections that are deleted were taken out of the BP, the policy, and put into the administrative procedure.
So a valid conversation, but perhaps best held during the conversation about the AP.
Are you moving to amend the language on 2B?
Yes.
I second that motion.
Okay. Can you, Jeff, could you clarify for?
Sure. I would recommend that you say the college's governance structure shall provide for effective participation of all constituent groups, comma, get the right language, Jeff, as appointed by their representative constituent organization, comma, as appropriate.
Okay. And we have a second?
Yes, I second.
Okay, great. Any comments, or council, do you feel like you're cool with that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we're gonna add that language in the draft of the BP here.
So we'll continue along. Is there anything else that people would like to discuss on?
Lillian, did you have a comment, or were you raising your hand just a second?
I was gonna see if it was gonna move in second.
Okay.
And then
Okay. And then I saw a hand up over there. Were there any other comments from the group, from the council? Okay, let me go to the public, yes?
So
Okay.
why I have two concerns. One is, I don't understand the point of including as appropriate. I don't really know what that means. I feel like we just establish what the appropriate procedure is to really constituent governance structures. So that, I understand the purpose of keeping those two words. I guess it's not a big deal. And then the sentence, special effort will be made to include student input via the executive council. I also think that's really vague. I don't know what special effort means. I don't, and can someone clarify what special effort means? And like, I think we should make sure that sentence has a purpose on regulations.
Well, on the as appropriate, it is vague. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. And on the second sentence that you referenced, that was existing language that we retained. But if the group wants to make it more specific, that would be up to the PGC.
Yes, Lillian.
could I attempt an explanation of as appropriate? So Title V defines effective participation, and so for example, students have a 9+1, and some things would come to PGC that's a student issue that we want to make sure that the loudest voice there perhaps is the student. For the 10+1 for faculty, sometimes those items come as institutional, and so that as appropriate allows for the different ways that things can be. That would be my guess.
Yes, Jenny.
But regardless, if it's a 10+1 or a 9+1 issue, it still has to come here, and the organizational structure is the way it is, it doesn't change. It sounds like the as appropriate is relating to governance structure, leaving some wiggle room for the governance structure, but I think we should make sure that's solid.
So the TGC, what are on both of these? Do you have a concern with the as appropriate language, and also regarding the lack of specificity on the special effort?
Yeah, so special effort, for example, we should define that as like 9+1 students.
Yeah, I hear. I get it.
Okay, Lillian, and then Brenna, and then maybe we'll go to the public.
So, and again, just if this helps, think about this way. This is referring to the college's governance structure, and this is the board policy for PGC, which then has standing committees and subcommittees and work groups. And within each of those committees and work groups, different items that come through would have different proportions of effective participation. And so that's why it would be as appropriate. So to me, that sentence works. I share your concern about, what does it mean, the special effort, what exactly does that mean? And perhaps that's something that in the AP needs to be, addressed, because I don't think it is right now.
Brenna?
I would like to suggest, because I do agree that it does, if somebody were to pick this up tomorrow, if it was still reading the same, I think there would be too much room for interpretation to different people as to what appropriate means. So I would suggest either defining that or circumstantially, like we're just suggesting, we're just striking it, altogether. And then in regards to the special effort, will be made, again, to, somebody just picks it up, it does kind of sound like the students, are not an equal representation at the table. It almost kind of sounds like an afterthought. It kind of weakens the sentence before it that says the governance structure shall provide for effective participation of all constituent groups, equally. So I would suggest that as well.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion. I would like to make a motion to strike as appropriate and also
The last sentence,
the last sentence.
special effort. Okay, do I hear a second of that before we get into discussion?
Yes.
Are you seconding it, Lucia?
Yes. No, it's second of all. Yes, I second that.
Okay. Did you have a comment on that?
No, I just agree with the comments that has been made. Yes.
Right, okay. Is there any other, yes, Simon?
Just a technical comment, can we have a reading of the sentence as it exists, if you just add something to it and you struck something,
Yes.
No, well,
I believe it would read, the college's governance structure shall provide for effective participation of all constituent groups as appointed by their representative constituent groups. I think that's.
It's an
organizations, period.
I want to make sure that that's what we're.
Okay, so that's what it would read, and that would be the end of that paragraph as proposed. Okay? Hold on, okay, totally finished yet.
So, I would say that resolution as appropriate, because there are different, circumstances that have different proportions of participation. So that would be, I would vote against that motion.
Okay, Jeff?
So I would like to recommend a friendly amendment to yours and ask you to split the as appropriate and the striking of the second sentence, or the last sentence, only so that I think we might go through. I'd like to divide the question. I'd like to divide that crowd.
You're saying have two motions. is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah.
However, I would say that I think the intent of the last sentence is really in favor of encouraging and stimulating and ensuring that students are active and participant in the process. And I think its intent is, in many colleges, students sometimes are an afterthought to this kind of conversation. And so this is really saying, we value our students, and we're gonna do everything we can to make sure that they're here and present. We want to reach out to them, and so I think that's its intent. It may not be the way it's read, but that's, I think, from my understanding, that's its intent. So I would vote to strike them both. Actually, for me, I like the way that it reads as it is.
Okay, so hold on, before we get to the motion, yes?
Yes, just with the word of as appropriate, I think that it would be good to find a different word, because as appropriate, it sounds stupid, and I don't feel like it is giving us the opportunity to participate as much as we deserve to participate in. This is the word.
Okay, so you're,
Maybe we can suggest a different word instead of as appropriate. And on the special effort will be made. I agree that it is gonna help the executive council to have a more effective participation. The only part is that the special effort, if we can change the special effort to will include the student input, just for sure that there will be a student input from the executive council. The special effort.
well, theoretically, when, the first sentence is, all constituent groups. So, I mean, the first sentence speaks to that in all constituent groups, students are a constituency. Just wanted to clarify. Let's see, just remind everyone, we have a motion on the floor to strike as appropriate in the last sentence. Ms. Karen?
And the request for friendly amendment to separate the motion.
Okay.
So procedurally, the request to divide is not an amendment, it's a request to do it, and you could just say, if no one objects, we're going to divide it, and then we just speak about the first part of the amendment and then the second part of the amendment. And I have something to say about the first part of the amendment, but if you wanted to do that division first, that would be fine.
Okay, so Jeff, do you want to, I'm quite not quite understanding, sorry, a bit thick over here, so, you want
To separate the discussion and first discuss the sentence that now ends as appropriate, and finish that discussion and vote on that, and then talk about the sentence special effort.
Gotcha.
If no one objects to that.
Does anyone object to that? Okay, so so just sticking with the first sentence, Ms. Karen.
Okay, so instead of as appropriate, I'm wondering, and this would be as a friendly amendment, if you guys think this is a good idea, to change that instead to say, in accordance with state regulation and the board policy. So that it would, and I'm wondering if that would also cover the things that Lillian wants to make sure that if this is referencing, yes, we're required to do this. Would that work? Instead of just taking out as appropriate, to say effective participation of all constituent groups in accordance with state regulation and board policy. You make a motion,
Okay.
so it's yours up to say yes or no.
I like the part, it clarifies it in accordance with state regulation. However, when you guys add the language of, in accordance with board policy,
This says
where
board
was
policy.
that, would it not be within the same board policy?
So you could just say in accordance with state regulation. Would that work? Okay, so if you accept that and say that's fine, and that, you're saying, yes, that's fine, that's the amendment, now we're making, and maybe at that point, others would support it.
I
So-
would speak in favor of that then.
So I'm understanding, the sentence would now read, the college's governance structure shall provide for effective participation of all constituent groups, comma, as appointed by the representative constituent organizations, comma, and then
In accordance with state.
in accordance with state regulation. Okay? Okay. Okay, so, yes, Ms. Lilly.
And not to belabor it, but we now have two ideas in that sentence, and we've now disconnected the state regulations from the effective participation.
Change the order.
I would propose maybe a friendly amendment to change the order and say the college's governance structure shall provide for effective participation of all constituent groups in accordance with state regulations and as appointed by their representative constituent organizations. Is that a good movement, Steve?
Okay. So shall we vote on that? Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, opposed? Okay, so we changed one sentence, yay. Okay.
On to the next.
Oh my God, okay. And now the second sentence. I believe there is a motion to strike the second special effort will be made to include student input via the executive council of the Associated Students. Do I have any comment on that? Michael? Because Title V requires us to try and have students participate.
So he was mentioning why, basically just on the students.
Okay.
Why emphasize that?
That's what I meant, that they're
Well,
already included.
No, they're already included, given the previous sentence, okay. Yes, Lillian?
I'm going to follow the students' wishes on this, but I just wanted to say that the sentiment there in ensuring that we hear from students remains, whether it's there or not.
Okay. So if we have no friendly amendments, the motion on the floor is to strike that last sentence, right? So let's go to a vote. All in favor of striking that last sentence, special effort will be made to include student input. Say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Some people will be stricken. Okay, Steve?
Okay, so we have to now at a close.
I think with that,
Okay.
adding the demand to be.
You're right.
So that's
All right, so what, are there other comments? Let's see, we're sections 3, 4, 5. Trying to just get through this policy, not procedure, so.
Lillian, did you have a comment? Oh,
Yes, before we jump to that, I did have a question about, section 4, item C, membership. Why that was taken out where it states, district governance council shall be comprised of the vice chancellor, academic affairs, details council, and administrative member, and then go on to discuss.
Well, that will be discussed in the procedure. But I will say that this language does not reappear in the procedure, because again, that is a substantive change where the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs is not the permanent chair of the PGC as proposed. But that is a topic for the AP in a few minutes, I think.
Lillian, did you have a comment or question? Okay. Bushra?
Well, this is, on policy, there is a lot of weight in policy, and if we take that, this is how the PGC was functioning. The membership, the chair was always vice chancellor, or that rank of vice chancellor. We don't agree that it has been taken. We wanted this C1 for C1 to stay and to be at the board policy and administration board.
Just to try to help, are you making a motion to have C1 remain in the policy and not move to the procedure?
In the board policy, and also we enforce it in the procedure.
Okay, but for now, we're talking about the board
Yes,
policy.
we would like to keep it. We are in agreement that this to stay, not to be taken out.
Okay, so your motion, are you making a motion, Bushra,
Yes.
to keep C1 in the board policy?
Yeah,
Because it is repeated in, I believe, in the administrative procedure.
Yeah,
Okay, so it'll be in 2 places? Just saying, but,
It has been stricken. We wanted.
No, I know that.
right, that's your motion is for C1 to remain as is.
Yeah.
C1 to remain as is. Okay, both what? Oh, in both places, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're only
But
talking.
we're only talking now about the policy.
We're only talking about the policy now,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I second that.
All right. Any comments? Comments from the council on keeping C1 in the board policy?
So,
Jeff?
so realistically, I think this is an element of something that needs to be discussed in an AP and not in a BP. So really voting on this now, I think, is premature. I certainly have my comments and thoughts about the person that will chair or not chair. but I don't think that this is germane to this level of conversation. It's not, I don't think it needs to be codified in board policy. So I would shoot this one down.
Lillian, did you have a comment?
I wanted to clarify that whether the discussion is about whether or not the chair of PGC is determined in the board policy versus, because if this is not struck, it contradicts our current AP, the draft of the AP that has been under discussion, and brings up the question of determining that the chair of PGC is the vice chancellor of academic affairs instead of as delegated by the chancellor. And so I feel like there's two conversations taking place, and I'm not sure which one we're addressing.
Well, I think the one that's being addressed, first of all, is to keep this in policy. If it then is kept in policy, there'll have to be a subsequent discussion as to whether this particular language should remain as is. That conversation was not necessary if it was struck. But if it's not struck, then that would compel a conversation as to whether the language should remain as is how I would envision the conversation going.
Okay, Brenna, and then Attila.
And yes, I mean, that is another thing, to consider for keeping it there, because again, by not having this reinforced in board policy, these languages, it seems like a lot of the administrative procedures are setting up to transfer power to one person, to in that view of where direction the college is going towards, can change with that person, as they change. And to me, by keeping certain languages in these board policies, it creates more of an atmosphere of stability for the college, which going forward is what the college needs instead of just transferring. And again, I feel like a lot of these policies and procedures are taking away that structure of that stability foundation that the college needs by keep transferring all these things to administrative policies only and to one person to make these decisions. So that's essentially why we'd like to keep it in the language of the board policy as well.
So as I hear it, there's been a motion to keep C1, to not strike C1. That's the only motion as it is now. So we need an up or down on that, and then if it passes, that would raise the issue of the language.
Okay, before we vote, Attila had a comment.
Yeah, well, I'm going back to what, once again, I'm not speaking against or for, but I'm just taking it further, what Lillian was mentioning that, and I agree, if we keep this one in, which once again, it's fine, either way for me, there's no conversation in the AP because this dictates that it has to be the vice chancellor in the AP. There's no discussion because this is going to.
No, what I was saying is the discussion would necessarily follow. If we do not strike this language, then that language about the vice chancellor of academic affairs is now present, and you would have to discuss it.
Yeah.
It has to be there.
Yeah, we would have to make the BP and the AP consistent.
You would have to align them.
Yes, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
So we are all on the same page.
Right.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from the council? Jeff?
So I guess I'm still a little, if the language, I guess that, the way I understand it is, it may stay, in which case we would then have a conversation about the nature of it staying. Right. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Chancellor.
Right. All right. Oh, yes. Yes, Chancellor. Oh. Okay. Any other comments from the council? And I believe JJ had his hand up, really, and then I'll go to the Chancellor.
Well, so one quick question before I ask my actual question. There's gonna be discussion if the motion carries to include this. There can be a discussion afterwards to change the language.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. So about whether or not to include this, I think it would be more appropriate in an AP because the whole scope of this BP is about setting like the purpose and the principles of the PGC, and it's just inconsistent to randomly start talking about the structure, but then like finish talking about the structure of the AP. I don't think that makes sense. If the AP is going to define the structure, I think we should be consistent with that. And also, I don't really see how an AP is like somehow less strict than an BP, because obviously the AP doesn't have to be approved by the board of trustees, but it still has to be approved here, and then it has to be signed off by the chancellor. So it's not like this is a recommendation; it's still a rule. I'm just saying that if we're going to keep the BPs brief and to the point, then I think that talking about the structure should just be removed.
And also, just keep in mind that APs, never mind my comment. Sorry, Lillian, and then I have to go to Chancellor Lamb.
And Karen, help me maybe with the wording, but could it be a friendly amendment to relocate this conversation to have the same conversation in the AP?
Here is my problem. My problem is board policy has the biggest way on how the college. Why you will want something as huge and as big as it is to shift it to an administration procedure where there is no decision can be shifted and made without our input. And when this is in board policy, it's set on stone, and we are having this for this PGC function since it started with, this is what the soul of the PGC, where the chair is always high rank as vice chancellor of academic affairs or as equivalent. And that is going to take a huge burden and problems that might gonna surface in the future, not only for now, for our students, reader in the future. We don't want any conflict. We want to participate. We want to be part of this constituent group, part of the college as constituent group. And when there is problems and conflicts close between the chair, when the chair is shifted to dean and sometimes maybe to somebody else, and sometimes it's not productive. It can stop us to move forward, to be productive, and to be part of this constituent group. When we say here at the beginning, City College of San Francisco Participatory Governance System is action-oriented and fosters collegiality and trust. When there is no trust, and that it can happen when it's close relationship between constituent group or just on the top. There is not only one campus, there is many campuses that we are dealing with the same problem. So this can take that burden, take that problem, and trying. That's why I would like this to stay on board policy.
Okay, I want to do a time check. It is now 5:30. Okay. We have 10 minutes left to discuss this topic, okay? And actually, I'm going to go to the chancellor first. Okay. So I just wanted to let you all know that it's 5:30 and we still have quite a bit of time to talk about this, and we still have some other stuff, okay? So we're moving forward, if everybody's okay with that, from our discussion from the beginning, okay? Okay, yes.
When I read his agenda right now, I think my answer is when the person brought listing the change was present students for make decisions also. I think no. It's important when the important is change for the campuses, for our education, for the administration, for everything. The students we need to be present for make opinions, for put our things in this change, because we are the students. We need make a participation.
Chancellor Lamb.
Yeah, just two comments for Ruth. One is on board policies. We are substantially behind on board policies. And I think part of the reason that we're a little bit behind on board policies is we have thrown everything on board policies. So it makes it a little bit harder. The board policies really
Bushra and then JJ. No, Salvatore.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, I agree with Bushra that we need to keep this, the C1. I don't see, why we have to be moved to, an AP when it is already here and we feel comfortable with it. Maybe the language could change a little bit. Also mentioned something about having a vice chancellor or academic affairs or equivalent, someone that is equivalent. So we can just make some little changes to the language and include some other administratives that could be sharing the user. Someone that is in a higher position, in a high position as a vice chancellor, and that's what we are. We want to keep it here. We want to make sure that we are. We have somebody that is in a high position chairing these meetings. We feel more comfortable with it.
So are you making a friendly amendment to the motion to delete or to unstrike this provision to say the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs or equivalent?
Equivalent position, like it's going to be associated, but somebody that doesn't have that quick relationship with students and it might create conflict. That's what we want to fix this problem, because we want to participate, we want to be part of the process.
And also because there are other administrators that have jobs that they need to take care of. They need to pay 100% attention to their jobs. And we feel like so a dean being a chair, so to me the dean is being distracted by chairing the meeting here instead of being in their center and taking care of their centers. So having certain administrators as chairing takes them away from their real jobs, the job that what they really needed.
Okay. Lillian, did you have your hand up? Simon? No? Okay. JJ.
Okay, so so it seems like we're getting into the merits of the content itself, so I'll make my comment now. I think it is really problematic to identify a certain administrator in the language of the board policy because that's super inflexible. Then that becomes a part of that person's job description. And it's peculiar that we would be privileging one division, academic affairs, over any other vice chancellor. It doesn't make sense. That doesn't align with the purpose of the DGC. I mean, instead of, for example, student development or finance administration, or maybe privilege isn't the right word because it's actually taking time away from that person's job description. And as we all know, the vice chancellors work like 1 million hours a week, so it's actually could be hurtful. And I totally agree with the concerns about having having a conflict of interest with having like a center dean or an administrator who isn't as quote unquote high ranking. But I still don't think the solution is to identify a specific administrator and make it part of the job description. I think the solution is in the AP to discuss a better process for choosing a chair, which would mean like being approved by the council as a whole or something like that. But I don't think we should be so inflexible as to make it a specific administrator, because otherwise, if for whatever, let's just say the students decide that they are not comfortable with that administrator chairing the meeting, then we still can't change it because it's set in the VP, and I think that's a problem. I think it should be more flexible than that.
Okay. So now I have Lillian, Attila, then Teresa.
So I want to speak on what I think is, I want to speak on behalf of what I think is currently the resolution. And it is to unstrike this language, but to modify it to be, I think Bushra said, associate vice chancellor or above. So I want to speak on behalf of that. It used to be the chancellor that chaired this group, and I'm swayed by the argument that it elevates the status of this committee.
Attila?
Yeah, so I have a huge dilemma here because yes, I do agree with Lillian and what Bushra said. It does elevate. It's also nice to have a chair who's a member of the cabinet, so has a little bit more knowledge what's going on in case we have a question. So it's definitely a plus. But I do also agree with the Chancellor that this is a wonderful leadership opportunity for, and I would go to the AP at that point, to a member of the PGC, not someone who's not a member of the PGC, because that's what we're talking about at the AP, that the chair should be a member of the PGC, not a person who's not a member of the PGC. That was one of the issues that last time we talked about. So I'm just expressing my frustration that I don't know where to go.
Okay, Teresa.
I think that what Lillian said, based on this gentleman's comments, and Lillian too, I think that we're moving towards just changing the language, that it would be a vice chancellor.
We should have said associate vice chancellor or higher.
Neutral, somebody in that position have
The
knowledge.
thinking that I have is that I'm in the same predicament as Attila is in terms of viewing that position, because I understand the importance of the chair having, maybe being at that level administrator wise, but I also think that, just as a college is, to chair a committee like this is a professional development opportunity for folks, who are looking to, grow in their careers, and as the responsibilities of a chair, maybe I'm not 100% informed, but it's really group facilitation, making sure that everyone who wants to speak gets to speak, timekeeper, so not necessarily judgment calls, but really just facilitating a group of folks discussing things on an agenda. That's kind of the simple way I look at it, so I'm kind of in between, I do disagree though with putting a specific person as the designated only person to chair this.
Okay, before I get to Jeff, then Brenna, I just would like to let the council know that we have less than 30 seconds to discuss this 50-minute topic. And it is now 5:40. And let me write down that Karen, okay. So, 13, 12, 10, 11, and 10.
I want to speak to the time issue.
Okay.
I'd like to propose that we extend time for this for 10 minutes, and that we, at the conclusion of the 10 minutes, continue this at our next meeting still as a first read, since we're not going to get far enough into this to go to a second read next time. That's my proposal on the time.
Okay. Does anybody second that? Okay. All right, so is everybody sort of in favor of limiting this to another 10 minutes? Because remember, we haven't even got to the AP. And we need to talk about also how long we want to go in the meeting. Because the 10 minutes is for the discussion of the BP, I assume, correct? Or this whole topic?
This whole topic.
Okay. All right, so my understanding from Ms. Karen, the motion is to extend the time to discuss this whole topic, both BP and AP 2.07 for another 10 minutes, and then to go to the further discussion of this, bring this back as a first reading.
Yes.
Yes, and discuss it, pick up the discussion at our next PGC meeting, which is March 17th. Okay, not the 4th, or the 3rd, because that's our orientation. It's the next meeting. Okay? Michael.
We are still going to have updates from the diversity committee.
That's something we need to talk about, because it's now 20 to 6.
And I, just, this is, well, let's finish this bit, and I have a comment. Are we finished? Because the orientation was specially scheduled to be after this. Because the idea is to provide an orientation on this procedure.
Correct.
And if we're still hammering out what the procedure is, orientation would be premature.
Maybe it would be helpful to see how it's going to work. It will help us decide if we like it.
But orientation on what?
Right. If it's going to decide. Yes, keep in mind that if we go another 10 minutes and continues, it's not going to be a fruitful orientation, which has already been said. 2 facilitators have been asked to join us, with a third possibly that Jill was going to get a hold of.
I don't see any way around that, unless you're trying to pressure us to just finish this whole thing in 10 minutes, which just seems quite impossible to me.
No, I'm just laying it out what it is. Okay, I'm not saying one way or another. Actually, Lillian, did you want to speak to, not make a comment on this, but speak?
This is something that's down to consider. One of the last emails that I sent to the chair of this committee actually said, here's how many meetings you have left this semester before we have to have everything all wrapped up. Yeah. And then we have to be able to plan better than meeting by one meeting at a time. And we have 5 meetings left this semester, effectively. And so I just want to put that out there, that there's a lot more on the, and I'm not saying to rush this because this is us, right? But we just need to know that in our deliberations, that there's a finite number of actual meetings and an endless amount of work for us to consider.
And to put a finer point on that, we are anticipating in a number of our standards that there will be policies in place. That as we present our accreditation report, we're counting on this group to move certain things through the process so we can say we've done them.
I have on the consent agenda for the executive council, I usually get their permission first before I propose resolutions here, but that doesn't stop any of you from doing it. But I was going to propose that PGC add an hour to every meeting, because we need time. I don't know which end it would go on, but the idea was simply to acknowledge that we're very quickly running out of time. And somebody else could make that proposal.
Or meet more frequently.
Okay, why don't we address, first of all, let's, before we get into that, let's address the moment at hand. So right now, we have not extended, so is everyone in agreement, we're gonna extend discussion of these 2 items
By 10 minutes.
by 10 minutes?
Took us
And
5
making
minutes.
it the first reading again, the second. First
After, on the March 17th, after we're supposed to have our orientation. Okay, just keep in mind that during the orientation, we're not gonna have anything to be oriented on.
I think that should be the schedule.
Why don't we
have another meeting and ask them to extend? And that gives us another meeting to talk about this.
Okay.
Or I could propose that we have a much more extended orientation that includes a detailed and focused discussion on AP 2.07.
I think the orientation is set to have the facilitators go through it and sort of train us, so I think that would change. I can't really say because I know Jesse has kind of set this up and, and has it certain ways, so I can't really say, but if that's what folks are looking at. Are we looking at now moving the orientation from March 3rd to March 17th, perhaps?
At a later date.
At a later date?
Later date to a later date.
Okay. Okay. So, Ms. Karen, okay, so let's first. Okay, so first of all, on the floor is to extend this discussion for another 10 minutes. Keep in mind, do we want to get through the other items? Because we have some other second reading items, and we also have standing committee updates, and we also have some first reading items. Okay, do you want to just go until we get through all of this and then adjourn the meeting then? Comments? Anything?
The motion on the floor is to give 10 minutes to finish this discussion on this topic.
Okay, I'm just
That's the motion on the floor.
I'm just letting everybody know where we are,
But I'd like to
okay?
get some clarity on what that actually means.
Okay, so
So
10
if we add
minutes,
10 minutes now, then we're then adding 10 minutes to the end?
yes.
Or are we doing not, or are we
That's a
not
separate
doing-
motion. That would be a separate motion, whether or not to extend the
So
meeting.
then we, aha.
I'll tell you what, let's just vote on the motion to extend this 10 minutes, if everybody's cool with that, and then at the end of the 10-minute discussion, the 10 minutes of this
Yes.
discussion, we'll figure out what we're gonna do with the rest of it, okay? Okay. Everybody cool with extending this 10 minutes? Yes. Oh, I see your thumb. Okay, great. Okay, fantastic. Now, I'm setting my timer for another 10 minutes, and the next person I had to make a comment was Jeff.
Good. So, so I have some concerns about tying the hands of the chancellor in terms of the decision-making on the person that they think would best serve this committee. And by restricting it to an individual or a group of individuals, goes in counter to that. It also closes the door entirely on a rather interesting and democratic process of a student potentially co-chairing fees. I think that's really a great option of allowing a student to really be a significant member of this group, or classified staff, or faculty member. I also like to clarify that ABCs structurally do not attend cabinet. So it's only the vice chancellors that are present for cabinet on a regular basis. And I'd also like to clarify that deans, at some point I heard someone say that deans weren't administrators, but deans are administrators. I want to be very clear on that. And finally, I haven't been present for these meetings, but I've been on pre-agenda every time. And my sense is that the current chair of this committee at the dean level has been running the meetings successfully. I haven't heard that meetings have been done well because of a dean being present or a dean running the meetings. So I think it speaks to the fact that there's a breadth of people can complete this function. So that would be the comments I would have on that topic.
Attila?
Yeah, so I just want to address once again this topic a little bit from my own experience. Unfortunately, once again, I have to speak to both sides. The Teacher Advisory Council, which was the predecessor of this particular group, for almost 1 year was chaired by the Chancellor, and it definitely gave some extra power. And it's not because the deans are not capable, it is just giving extra power. But at the same time, my own experience was when we were dealing with the sunshine policy, that particular meeting, I knew the Chancellor asked for it because I was working with I was the chair of that committee, asked me to chair the College Advisory Council, and no one had a problem with that. And it was a very good experience, and I think I was able to listen better than the Chancellor because Leilani, Trustee Rizzo, etc., we were all on this committee and know more about it than the Chancellor at the time. Also, I have to address, I know that Pasadena City College, I know that, for example, their top level committee, committee, that was a few years ago, I don't know has it done now, but I know that at that particular point when I was looking at that college, the committee was the top committee was chaired by the president and by the student president. So there was a co-chair. So that's why I can see both in both sides, and I'm just putting there my own personal experience, so people can think about it a little bit.
Okay, the next is Brenna.
And to address what I'm hearing about the ability for anybody to chair opportunity, based on opportunity. As much as I would hate to take that, democratic process away or that opportunity away from anybody, my main concern with striking this is that, again, it kind of takes away the safety net from, having somebody who's so close to some of the constituent groups, faculty, having direct influence over the faculty or the students. If there were, for instance, that person at that level had, conflict of interest with one of the constituent groups or multiple constituent groups, how is that really then speak to the neutrality of the chair that the chair is supposed to possess, amongst all the constituent groups, and then how does that also speak to the opening statement of the values that, the governance system that's supposed to foster collegiality and trust, if there's no, if we take away that safeguard to prevent that from happening, having somebody who's so close to having the opportunity to influence one or more of the constituent groups. I don't see, how having, maybe we should limit it to, one position, as we were saying, maybe having just, title or above. And also, and maybe adding the language, something that it can be more democratically elected position, chair, versus just one person. Because to me, that's, again, kind of check and balance between looking forward to possible tropism, and such.
Okay, Ms. Karen, I have to go to the council first, and I have a list. Ms. Karen? No? Okay. And now I'm gonna go to the public. Sean?
So I'm just gonna piggyback on what Teresa was talking about with choosing an administrator. I find it disparaging that we say only a vice chancellor or associate vice chancellor has the leadership ability to run the PGC. And you want, in fact, stretching it out further, anyone should be allowed to run the PGC that the chancellor deems in a high enough leadership ability. So saying that directors and deans are not qualified to run the PGC is really not derogatory, but it just puts down what we want to foster, that cohesiveness amongst the council, and we don't want to separate that. So going back, first off, this should be again an AP, but if it's going to go in the BP or modified in the AP, we shouldn't limit it to just a certain person. It should be open-ended person that the chancellor designates.
Okay. Becky and then JR.
I would just like to speak to this as more of a human issue. This is what we're talking about here. And what we're trying to cultivate is trust. That was something that you brought up, Boucher, and I think that in order for us to build trust, we do have to have clear guidelines about what we're talking about, no matter what it looks like. And I think that there are always going to be people that we have more of a trust in than others. But if we want to try to build community for our college, I think that the procedures are what's really going to help us form that. And that we're always going to have some lack of trust for somebody in the room, for whatever reason.
Right.
And that there's always going to be some subjectivity to a relationship. And that we have to set aside that subjectivity and focus on what we're trying to do here together as a goal.
Okay, JR.
Maybe it's my lack of understanding, but what I think I'm hearing from the students is this idea that there's a possibility that someone could have a conflict of interest. But to me, the chair, you're basically telling us that if you want a chair to be a specific person, their ability to vote is gone until there's a tie. It's the only time they get to vote. The chair does a lot of administrative things. They run meetings. So I'm not sure from listening to the concerns you have that it has to be a vice chancellor. You really just reduce the role of that person when they're the chair, because they run the meetings and make sure everyone gets to talk. They follow the procedures. They don't get to like veto ideas, and they don't get to say, hey, my idea because I'm the vice chancellor is better, or I can not have a conflict of interest. Their sole job is to run the meeting. So it doesn't have to be someone who's at a really high level to run a meeting very effectively, because we've seen the PGC do it for quite a while now that it hasn't been the vice chancellor running the meeting. So then at least from what I'm hearing, is you're really just concerned about having someone who's very powerful in the meeting is not the chair, right? The people who get to vote are the people who are powerful. And this person's only power is if there's a tie. So I'm not sure, but I think there's and maybe I'm misunderstanding the role of the chair, but they're not necessarily the most powerful person on there, or they're not necessarily the person who, if they have the conflict of interest, can actually push that through.
Okay, I just want to point out that we have 36 seconds left on this topic, and then I'm going to call for a vote, okay? So I'm going to hear 2 more quick comments, and that's it. Brenna, Lillian.
My concern is not so much, I realize there's supposed to be a non-voting party unless there is a tie, but looking to find it now, but for the sake of time, that I remember seeing through some of these other APs and BPs that the chair also decides, puts together an agenda, decides what goes on the agenda, and that's where I'm concerned about conflict of interest with the constituent groups, is if they can't get their items on the agenda because we have a chair that is in conflict with the movement directly under them, administrative wise. That's what my concern is.
Well, the agenda is formulated by an agenda review group, okay, that is represented by, I believe, all constituents. I mean, I'm not the regular chair, and I only, but I believe that is the case. Lily? Because we're done with this topic.
I would like to propose what is potentially a friendly amendment and compromise to the unstriking of this language. And it would be to do three things: to unstrike it, to make it the Associate Vice Chancellor and above, but to put it in the AP. And I would like the students to consider if that's a friendly amendment. I have a feeling that that takes care of the vast majority of the issues.
So are you saying keep both the language here in the BP and in the AP? Or move it to the AP?
Accept this language, generalized not to the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs, but what you said was Associate Vice Chancellor and above, but move it to the AP.
Do you accept that? It would be moved from the BP to the AP.
Because we're talking both about location and content.
So my question is, why is a problem to be in?
Because usually the board sets policy, and the day-to-day operations of the college are delegated by the board to the chancellor. And how the membership and policies go, or what we do to conform to the board's policies, is up to the chancellor. And that's in the ed code.
Okay,
So we're gonna vote on this, so do you accept the amendment?
The amendment to that,
Uh-huh.
to add the language of that the chair has to be agreed among the constituent group, that the constituent group will be comfortable and will agree about the choice of the chair, no matter how the chair is, associate vice chancellor, just or whatever dean.
So the way I think the way this is being proposed is that there would be a smaller group of people who would be eligible to be the chair. But the way the procedure is currently written is the chancellor appoints the chair. You are proposing the chancellor would not appoint the chair, which is a completely different topic than we've been discussing.
Okay, so, no, but I'm just,
Okay, so would you accept Ms. Lillian's friendly amendment, but, because we need to vote on this now.
yes, we accept the amendment.
Okay, so you realize that the amendment is Associate Vice Chancellor or equivalent or above, right? And you want to also add, no?
Yes, but only the chancellor will not have that power to appoint. I know the chancellor has a power, but that is at discretion of the.
So you would like it to be elected by the chair to be elected by the PGC?
By the PGC members, yes.
So that's a different amendment to Lillian's amendment.
Yes, that's friendly amendment to Lillian's amendment.
We're not in this friendly amendment. You were the one.
You're the one that originally made the
I
amendment.
am the one that's making amendments.
Point of order.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
point of order.
that's right.
You don't need to say friendly amendment.
Yes.
You need to say you're changing your
Yes.
amendment, and
Yeah,
now it's a
changing
new
the
amendment, a
amendment. Yes.
substitute motion for a new amendment.
Yes,
And this is what the new amendment
exactly.
says.
Yeah.
Please write this for, I would also like to add additional friendly amendment to that. That I need a parliamentarian consult with Karen. If you look at under authority of the board policy, please scroll down to authority and make sure that we are doing something that so see where it says the chancellor in consultation with constituent leadership is authorized to establish the administrative procedures. So I want to make sure that when we do this, that perhaps when we come back to this, that we make sure to look at this and make sure that it doesn't become a line item veto.
I think that this maybe will have to be reconsidered next time to look at the ramifications of what's being.
If it passes.
So can we get a rephrasing of the?
Yes.
The motion. Amendment on the
that language, change the Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs to Associate Vice Chancellor and above. And or above. What was the third piece? I thought the third piece. Oh, and put it in the administrative procedure.
And elected by the PGC.
Yes, the chair.
Oh, you wanna add it?
Yes.
And you've added elected by PGC, so that's 4 things.
Yes.
So those are the 4 things on the table that we're.
Okay,
Do we have a second on that?
yes, okay. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, say aye. Okay.
Aye.
How about a,
Let's do a hand count.
Yeah.
All those in favor, please raise your hand so I can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. All those opposed? Okay. Looks like motion passed. Okay. All right. Now, we've gotten through the BP for now. Okay. We still have the AP. It is now 6:03. Okay, and we still have the AP.
and did we finish the BP? Because we jumped around, I'm not sure if we
No,
made
no,
it all
we-
the way through.
It's a first read again next time.
It's a second first reading.
It's a second first reading next time.
Okay.
but
Oh, I
we
see.
have
Okay.
some preliminary agreement on this piece.
No, I got that, but just for today, I wasn't sure if we had completed our discussion of a first run. Okay.
Okay, so that means, according to Karen, Ms. Karen, that her motion for 10 minutes was for BP and the AP. So we're done with both,
Yes.
okay? It's gonna come back for a second first reading the next time, both of these, okay? And, so now, I guess, the question I have now is, yes, Bushra?
About the authority. I would like to address that.
We're not talking about that now.
Okay.
Okay? And the authority is pursuant to what's in the Ed Code and Title V, okay? Karen?
I'm making a motion to extend the meeting by 10 minutes and first to take care of Lonnie's concerns about what we're going to do with the orientation.
Okay.
I second that.
All right, because we've now run out of the meeting time, okay. All those in favor? Yes, aye, okay, great. So now, Attila,
I'm sorry, there was just a big confusion here. So there was only just vote of yes, right? You
Yes.
didn't ask for no or abstain.
no, I asked for
Yes
those
or no?
opposed.
You said opposed, you didn't say abstain.
I'm sorry.
And, no,
I'm
because
sorry?
we missed that whole part, by the way. We heard that for, but the rest of them, they all,
No, I said opposed,
but I'm telling you.
and
we
you're
missed
right, I
that.
didn't say abstain.
Right, I was
but-
waiting for abstain.
Yeah,
Sorry.
We all were waiting for the oppose and
Okay.
abstain. And
Well,
all.
I
Just
said
let me know.
opposed. Okay, so we could do it again if you like, okay? The motion is the 4 parts, unstrike,
The language.
There were 2 opposed.
Well, actually, there's more than two.
Yeah,
Two on this side of the room.
okay, so,
Okay, we.
yes. The motion is to unstrike, change to Associate Vice Chancellor above, move it to the AP, and elected by the members of the PGC. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye, or hold up your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right? All those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any abstentions? Okay, looks like the motion carries. All right. We've extended the meeting for 10 minutes. I'm going to start it now, because we need to decide what we want to do with the rest of it. Yeah, okay. All right, so now we have BPAP 1.36 and all the second readings. So do we want to just charge forward? Group, council? Yes.
I know we're extended 10 minutes. I know it's 6:10. It feels like the more burning issue is our orientation.
Okay, so do you want to discuss the orientation?
I think we should.
Okay, so what do we want to do?
You want to extend orientation, so we'll have a discussion first with this one?
democracy.
We need to,
All right, so lots of different ideas. We could choose to start orientation early or have orientation go late. We could propose dinner be brought in, and we could start at 3:30 and go over 2.07, the BP and the AP, and then we could, because there's other things to have orientation on as well. It's not only AP 2.07, although that's really capturing all of the key portions of it. You could put a motion on the floor to have a meeting, you can have an emergency meeting, you can have an extended meeting.
or a special meeting.
You can have, right, you could add a meeting, I mean, if you wanted to, you could look at everything you have to consider this semester and add as many meetings as you want. So all of that is on the table.
Yes, Michael.
Louder, please.
Can't hear you.
I like to work, we have the dinner and the longer meeting.
And happy hour.
The three. Say happy hour, but for the orientation, so extended.
I think we're gonna get some agreement.
Okay.
Are you all 21?
Okay, so what time are you proposing to start?
Starting the meeting, well, as early as we need, I mean, but I don't know.
Let's start at 8 in the morning.
Sounds like we might need to stay before. But no.
Right now, you go.
If I were gonna guesstimate on 2.07, I think that we're very close on the BP, but I think we have like 2-3 hours on the AP. And you actually all have a hard copy, and I will also send it to Jesse to send you an electronic copy of the Senate version. It's not just comments, but there's added language to it on 10+1 items.
Possibly not.
Okay.
So I think it's like 3 hours just to get through this.
Okay, Jeff, yes.
So more time is going to be great, but I'm really reflecting on what Steve said, and not in an attempt to push or to cajole, but really just in kind of a practicality that we have, as you mentioned, a great deal of work to be done, and not just work that affects this committee, but that affects the entire institution and our ability to successfully complete with very serious and time-sensitive accreditation matters. And so I'd really like to urge this committee to really kind of, we have issues that we want to work through, but we also have to find a balance in terms of the amount of time we're going to spend on, if this is an example of how we'll go forward, we might as well bring our sleeping bags and spend a great deal of time together, which might not be a bad idea, but I think at the end of the day, we should really kind of try to work to be as expeditious as possible in our deliberations. I think that the word that seems to be ringing loudly to me is trust, right? Trusting that we're developing policies and practices that will guide this institution and guide this group successfully. And that's going to take a little time. We can't always get it exactly right in our language. And I recall seeing that in our APs, we established a group whose job it is to review all of the work that we do today and ensure that it's actually functioning for us in the future. And so it's not as though this is the one and only decision point, that we will be looking at this and revising this and changing this. So just as a word of thought as we go forward. And I support the idea of orientation and the like and more time.
Okay, so now we have about, I have to see, just a few minutes left, less than 5 minutes. We have to figure out how we want to spend our time. If we want to extend the time of the meeting again to get through the rest of this, or to talk about, have some real discussions about what we want to do about the orientation. I mean, I realize we are, but we really, I'm going to echo Jeff's concerns, expeditious, because we could sit here spinning our wheels for the rest of the night. Lillian.
So I appreciate expeditious. I'm gonna remind the chair that the chair is not supposed to advocate.
I'm not, I'm just wanting to
And,
be mindful of everyone's time.
Thank you. But I also want to say that if we look specifically at just how we want to spend our next meeting, it could be very productive. At the same time, AP 2.07 is actually a consilience of a great many issues at the college that I don't believe can be shortchanged. And so I want to put that out there. Even though there's a group and even though it gets reviewed, right now, these are issues that we need to settle and put into practice and give them the due weight that I want to appreciate the due weight that goes into it.
So I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to move that we have an extended meeting for our next encounter. And in that time, I would recommend that we put the small stuff first. All the second reads and the easy stuff first. Get that done within an hour time frame or so, and then move on to the larger, more difficult conversation. So we can then progress on our agenda, accomplish some things, feel good about that, and then have the meaningful, serious conversation that's going to require to get through AP 2.07. That's a motion.
Okay, do I hear a second? Second? Yes.
You're referring to the 17th, right?
The next time, our next.
Third.
Our next meeting.
Third.
So no orientation.
The next meeting after that.
That's what you all have to decide.
Orientation is the 17th.
No,
We would figure out in the future.
At another point, we
One
don't know
issue,
yet.
Jeff, is that we weren't intending to have any of the small items on the orientation day, which is our next meeting.
Yeah, right.
That was,
Yeah, but I think you can't orient it until you get this thing.
no, but the small items, we only need 2.07 for orientation.
Right.
I didn't hear a second, but I think we're discussing the motion, so.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to say I'm gonna need to speak against this motion for the reason that my experience on PGC is that we have usually done that, and as a result, the little stuff that people say, oh yes, this can be done in 3 minutes, this can be done in 5 minutes, it doesn't get done in 3 minutes, in 5 minutes, and next thing you know, we run out of time and there's never any time to discuss the big important things. So, as you notice, that's why we said we want the budget not to be at the end of the meeting, right, where there'd be lots of time, because there wasn't going to be, put at the beginning, and sure enough, the budget swelled up to take, I don't know, 45 minutes instead of whatever.
Took an hour.
If you were going to suggest that at the, I'm going to propose a friendly amendment. If you propose that at the March 3rd time that we meet, that we extend the time in some way so that we could work on this BP and AP first and then do the orientation, that I would be happy to support.
Do you accept that?
I would second that.
Okay, then that's your motion and I'm seconding it. But can you come up with a specific proposal of how we are extending the time? Do we start earlier? Do we run later? Do we ask the people doing the orientation to come later? What is it that you?
That's a difficult one. I would think later is going to be the only way we're going to have time to do it, right? But later is like now, right?
Later, okay, and
I would recommend later.
And with dinner.
Well, the dinner part's tough, because unless we're all gonna bring our own, I don't know who's gonna pay for it, right? Right? I mean, having to get dinner.
I want to check in with the students as to your availability as this conversation
Right,
goes
that's
forward.
everybody
Are
has
you
issues with
available
it,
to stay late on March 3rd, a Thursday?
That's everybody.
Okay. Our 10-minute extension is up.
I don't think we have very much choice. I think we have to meet on March 3rd, and we have to get through this process.
Right.
And if it's gonna take longer than our normal 2 hours,
Then
it'll have to happen.
but at the same time, students have class.
No, I
mean, tonight,
right.
I have a flight, I'm arranging a different ride to the airport right now, so it's not enough to just say, we just have to do it. We have to, we have to plan.
Do it respectfully, but we have to do it.
But we have, yeah.
Thank you for considering that. I'm also really appreciate that, especially that I have a class at 6:30 usually, but today is gonna start at 7, so I'm gonna go back to Mission Center running. Thank you for considering that. And to me, I prefer to have more meetings with less time, because that allows me to attend my classes and do my homework. And having longer meetings. Also, having longer meetings means that my brain is gonna get burned out. So if I'm gonna get very tired, yeah, probably more meetings.
Attila.
And an earlier start, would that work for you guys? I heard what you said, but as another option, to start, let's say, an hour earlier.
Yes, at 2:30 as opposed to 3:30?
And
Is that
go till
possible?
5 to do.
I mean,
And the meeting is always Thursday. That's the.
Because there's a board meeting.
Because
That's-
the idea is to get through things before the board meetings, before that goes to the board.
Not the other day, not besides Thursday.
I,
Are you open to do it the other day also? Like more meeting, but the other day than Thursday? No? Schedule?
No, because then we have the classified center, so you
There are
said
other
that you
things.
cannot schedule around it,
Okay.
that's the reason.
Michael, yes.
could we consider maybe a little bit earlier and then a little later, like half an hour?
Yeah, to
Just
possibly,
later
so I'm
to-
hearing from 2:30 to maybe 6:30. Meryl, did you have a comment?
Well, I don't know, I'm sort of new to this, but you guys have never come in on a Saturday to just get it all done?
No, that hasn't happened, I don't
Okay.
think.
Some of us
I
work
guess as a
Saturday.
department chair, I'm here on Saturday too, right? And Simon's nodding his head, so, we're just going like, is it possible? I know nobody wants to hear it, but I'm just saying, like, if we have all this.
So I can recap really quickly, Simon, I'll get to you in just a second. I'm hearing a proposal that maybe the March 3rd, and somewhere in there we sandwich orientation, yes or no? That we start at 2:30, end at 6:30, we get through some of this stuff, the AP 2.07 and BP 2.07, and then we do our orientation. Is that pretty much what everyone's saying? To sort of summarize? Yes? Okay. Simon and then Michael.
No, I was just doing what, you got it.
Okay, great.
Exactly what I was
Great.
looking forward to.
Okay, so are we ready to vote on it? March 3rd meeting, start at 2:30, end at 6:30. Hopefully we get to some of the stuff we're not covering today. We get to BPAP 2.07 and we do orientation. Wow, what a super meeting. And I'm sorry? Say that. Food is included, okay. I don't know how we'll do that, but we'll figure something out. So, all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, great. So that means we're not gonna do some of this other stuff right now, we're gonna adjourn the meeting. Hold on. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
I'm concerned, we have some people here to talk about the diversity, the environment here, and so we do the whole time. speak
Okay.
about updates.
So do we want to get to the APs and BPs that are remaining, the first and second readings? We have unfinished business, we have new business. Are we covering that next time, or are we covering it this time? I'm trying to do it one piece at a time, so that we're clear. Is that what's included in the next meeting?
In that 4 hours, I would not expect to get, myself personally, these individual little things.
I'd recommend we just move this agenda forward, knowing that we're probably not gonna get through it, but it's all put together, let's just put it back on, and 2.07 is our priority, and if we can get more done, we will.
Yeah.
Okay.
If it's not on the agenda, then you wouldn't be able to get to it. Then we won't,
Right.
right? So there we know that.
Right.
Okay. Just so you know, before I take any other questions or comments from the council, Molly, you're here to talk about diversity?
Diversity.
Okay. So I wanna take your questions and then I wanna bring Lonnie up and I wanna actually say something about, that I got from Kristen. Tilla?
Just want to, just to change, amend it a little bit. I agree we should keep the agenda, but for the next time around, maybe we should not have standing committee updates.
Okay.
For March 3rd.
Good idea.
Okay. All right. Sounds fine. Because next time is supposed to be mostly the orientation with these items we didn't get to today. Okay? All right. And that's my understanding. Okay, Sean.
As a member of the public, if an item's not gonna be gotten to on the agenda, I'd rather it not be on there. I was here to speak on an item in new business, and if you're gonna carry the agenda over in its entirety to the next meeting and not get to those items again, I know how these meetings go, so I'm not offended. I know that the meetings run long, but just saying, I might do something else with my evening rather than sit around all day.
Well, it was not planned, sorry, Sean. So we're basically carrying over unfinished business and new business. Okay, quick standing committee updates. I'm just gonna say one thing from Kristen. We do have a date of the visiting team, which is October 3rd through the 13th, or 10th, I'm sorry, October 10th through the 13th, the visiting team will be here. Okay, so that's pretty much accreditation. Lonnie, did you want to talk about diversity?
Yes. Can I speak from here?
Yeah, please.
So,
Come on up.
the diversity committee has been meeting furiously. I'm Ilona McGriff. My nickname is Lonnie, which is why we call her Lonnie. So the diversity committee has been meeting to plan our diversity awareness event, which will be held on March 3rd, 2016, from 8:30 to 1:30. And the main, there's a speaker, Dr. Julian Malveaux, as well as breakout groups. And the flyers are ready. They should be going out into your emails very soon, like tomorrow. And that's pretty much it. The theme of the event is diversity from intention to reality. And so we're hoping that people will come out and support it. If you have classes and faculty, bring your colleagues. Students come out and support. We'll have a student panel kicking off the event. And then from there, we'll go into some breakouts to discuss the issues. One of the workshops is LGBTQ 101, and the other one is around hiring and retention of a diverse workforce. So that's pretty much our update. We're moving. It's really exciting to see so many people participating and being involved. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, there's no report. I got an email from Vice Chancellor Davies. There was no report for enrollment, and I did not see Pam at all.
No report, no
Yeah,
update.
there's no update. Okay, is there any public comment really quickly? Okay, motion to adjourn?
Second.
I can't make the motion. Okay, second? Okay, we're adjourned.
What did you say?
I would take your